The Marine Toys for Tots foster care program is bringing hope to children who need it most. Every 2 minutes, a child enters foster care, often with only a small bag of belongings. More than 400,000 children face trauma and uncertainty, many before age 8. This May, during Foster Care Awareness Month, Toys for Tots is creating Room for Joy. In 2025, nearly 375,000 children received comfort through toys, books, and essentials, reminding them they are not alone. Donate now and change a child's life.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
We're honored and privileged today to have an esteemed fellow from the Hudson Institute, Joe Rayburn, who's an expert on the Middle East and has background in foreign affairs and diplomacy. Eric, I turn Mr. Rayburn over to you.
Joel, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So what I'd like to do is to start with the hub of the problem in the Middle East, Iran, and then, time permitting, talk about a couple of spokes like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and Hamas. So let's start with Iran. If you listen to the Democrats and the mainstream media, Iran has never been more powerful. America's on the verge of collapse. We are near surrender, and Iran is probably now the most powerful country in the world. Now, I may be exaggerating, but not by much. Long and the short of it is the media and the Democrats are portraying America as losing and Iran is winning. I see it 180 degrees the opposite way. I see America on the cusp of total victory and Iran on the cusp of total collapse. What do you see?
I see it similarly to the way you do, Eric. I'm also surprised by the way in which it's sort of an Orwellian up is down, down is up. There's an information campaign going on that the Iranians and their allies and I think apologists and are pushing, and that's the only front on which they're winning. I will say, I do think they may be winning that one, the information one. But back in the real world, in the military world, in the economic world, they're in quite a difficult position, and I don't see that they have many options. Militarily speaking, their military capabilities have just been absolutely, degraded is too light a term for it. Their air defense, missile defense, Air Force, naval assets have all been wiped out. Their intelligence systems and so on, obviously very degraded. And then economically, on the economic front, they were already in a state of near economic collapse before the war. So they're in free fall now. And the blockade that President Trump has applied, I think, really is an existential threat to the Iranian regime. So, if you recall, it was the economic collapse and just the disaffection broadly in Iran that was one of the impetuses to the January nationwide uprising against the regime. So I don't see many options for them other than just to try to use the information weapon that they have to try to fraudulently convince the rest of the world that they can hold out and that they have the means to hold out. I don't see it.
Well, are the Democrats morons, or are they strictly politically motivated? What's your assessment of that?
Because otherwise intelligent people, I think, don't know how to discern reality from fiction in this case. But that deserves an entire conversation of its own. It's partly that in the post-Cold War era, I think in a lot of people in the political sphere and the public became unused to being able to judge military power and relative military power. So I think people didn't appreciate just the military imbalance, the military mismatch between the United States and Israel on one side and an opponent like the Iranian regime on the other. And so it's a stark military contrast, but the public is not used to that, to being able to think in those terms.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the post-Cold War era. Of course, the Cold War ended with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union didn't collapse because it was a military confrontation. The Soviet Union collapsed because its economy collapsed. It couldn't keep up with the West. So similarly, isn't that the strategy with the blockade?
It is that. Well, it is. It's like a micro. It's like a micro containment strategy almost. But the Iranian regime is very vulnerable to that because of their economic mismanagement, because they didn't put away for a rainy day, if you will. They don't have much of a diversified economy. Certainly not their government revenues. Their government revenue stream, the state revenue stream, is wholly dependent on their oil and gas revenues, and there's only one exit point for them to get out into the global market, and the U.S. Navy can block that, is blocking that, and then if they do manage to run the blockade, or if they had vessels exports that were already out of the Persian Gulf before the blockade, well, those can be blocked too, because the money that they would get from the sale of their oil and gas can't be repatriated if the U.S. Treasury is enforcing sanctions on those transactions. They can try to hide through cryptocurrency, but then Secretary Bessent just told us yesterday that there's been an effort to hunt down their crypto channels and to seize $500 million of them. That's a pretty good shot across the bow, or upwards of $500 million. So I just don't think, financially speaking, they really don't. I think they're really on the brink of a cliff.
Well, do you think any more kinetic military action is necessary to push them over that cliff, or is the economic blockade sufficient?
That will depend on the patience, I think, that the administration and the U.S. and our allies can have. I think definitely a blockade plus tight sanctions enforcement would lead to the financial collapse of the regime over time. How quickly could there be leakages? Could there be some sort of illicit bailouts from allies? Might they have means to string it out? That's what they're hoping. That's what the regime is hoping to find, and what the Treasury and others are hoping to hunt down and block. So that is the question. Now, if given enough time, I think in a matter of several weeks, a couple months, they would probably get to the point where they couldn't continue. I felt they were close to that in late 2020 when we had the maximum pressure sanctions during the first Trump administration. They really got to the point where they were essentially out of foreign currency reserves. They were going to have to essentially collapse their currency, no longer be able to finance foreign exchange. They wouldn't be able to pay for any imports, and their economy would grind to a halt back then. That's what they were facing. And then the Biden administration came in and relieved the pressure, unfortunately. That was the story of what happened in 2020, 2021. So I think we're at a similar point now, but I think the Iranians are weaker this time around. So they don't have many options. Okay, that's a long way of saying, yes, it's possible, I think, without further military action, but it just depends on how much patience we can have for that. And it depends on if the Iranians at some point are going to lash out militarily in response to this economic blockade, which they have done in the past.
Yeah, I don't think the American people fully appreciate that the reason we're in this situation is because of Barack Obama's nuclear deal and because Joe Biden's bailout in 2021, as you point out. Without those two actions, Iran is a basket case.
Yeah, I think that's right. The Iran nuclear agreement was fatally flawed because, number one, just the concept that instead of deterring the Iranians from essentially having a nuclear program and all the other aspects of their behavior, that we would essentially incentivize or pay them to opt not to do that. Well, they were going to opt to do it at some point. The second fatal flaw was that there were sunsets to all the restrictions. So but over a course of 10 to 15 years, the restrictions were going to be lifted, and then they would be free to enrich uranium to whatever level they wanted, and not be subject to international sanctions. And then the third fatal flaw was that it gave them sanctions relief, and it was a commitment by the United States and Europe not to sanction their central bank, their oil company, and other elements of their core revenue generation, only if they agreed not to enrich uranium past a certain point. But it didn't say anything about whether they're going to sponsor terror or launch ballistic missiles at the United States or others. And ship drones to places like Ukraine or to Hezbollah and so on, or the Houthis. So those three things made it so that in the end, the Iran nuclear agreement collapsed of its own weight. It was just unworkable. I think people don't really realize that.
See, to me, the greatest barometer of whether the United States is winning and Iran is losing is what are the actors in the regions doing? Mm-hmm. And the two best examples, I think, is Lebanon, who have entered into significant and real peace negotiations with Israel with the hopes of neutering Hezbollah, and the UAE's withdrawal from OPEC and their snubbing, although they attended the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council's recent meeting. Would you agree that those are good barometers to test that the actors in the region see America and Israel on the side of winning and Iran on the side of losing?
I'm with you on your observation about the UAE and, frankly, other Gulf partners. The way in which they've gone from trying to basically hedge with the Iranian regime, in other words, to have a cordial relationship with the Iranian regime so as to stave off Iranian attack. The way that collapsed because the Iranian regime lashed out at them anyway, especially the UAE, and lashed out at the UAE even more harshly than they did against Israel. So that reorienting of the Gulf, I think, geopolitically, is a huge barometer. As you say, with Lebanon, I think the jury's still out. It's for sure the non-Hezbollah aligned blocs want to end the Hezbollah problem once and for all politically, get past it, and yes, have shown an unprecedented willingness to come to the table with the Israelis directly. But the Iranians are doubling down. They're attempting to double down in Lebanon by having Hezbollah just be as recalcitrant as possible and essentially daring the rest of the Lebanese to essentially go to a civil war. The Hezbollah with Iranian backing is basically in response to just really not that controversial political initiatives inside Lebanon, is threatening essentially assassination of other political leaders and return to civil war. So as I say, I think the jury's still out there.
All right, let's Jesse, your turn for Mr. Rayburn.
Mr. Rayburn, thanks for joining us. I truly appreciate it. I know we all appreciate it, so our listeners. And I also want to thank you for your 26 years of service as a U.S. Army officer and, of course, your continued service in public service. I just have maybe 2 or 3 quick questions. Number one is, who do you believe right now, based on your experience in the area, is in charge right now in Iran? Is it the military commanders? Is it the new head of the mullahs and such? Who's in charge right now that is really basically has the influence in that country as we go forward?
That's a great question, Jesse. And I think the answer is no one really knows for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think the Iranians don't really know. And they're actually there are different factions that are jostling with one another right now. Of those factions, so the Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, they're also divided in some factions. But it seems like the faction that is, I would say, headed by a real hardliner like Ahmed Vahidi, who's the new commander of the Revolutionary Guards. I mean, this guy is the hardest of the hardliners. So I think he's probably the first among equals in the decision, let's say the decision-making tier of that regime, of the remnants of that regime right now. But for sure, there are other factions that probably would be more inclined to cave to American pressure than the Vahidi faction. At least that's the way I think, we're reading it from the outside without access to intelligence or inside information. But Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader, seems to be kind of supreme leader only in name. It's not even clear what his actual health and physical condition is. Is he awake? Is he cognizant? We hear rumors that he's disfigured, that he's undergoing plastic surgeries, that he's lost a leg, and so on. So that doesn't sound like a guy who's in shape to be vibrantly leading a regime that's at war. And then also, Jesse, there's another part of the Iranian regime which has to actually, administer the state, try to manage the economy and so on. And they seem to have a very different set of near-term objectives than maybe the Revolutionary Guards do. That's President Pezeshkian. Probably Foreign Minister Arakchi is with that group. I think the Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, who's a former Revolutionary Guards general, but he's turned politician, I think he has a foot probably in both camps. So I think, and I'm sure there are other factions even outside those, like the former President Ahmadinejad and some others that probably are weighing in from outside that system, and it's a bit of a mess, which I think is what President Trump is, why he comments on it to that effect from time to time.
Mr. Rayburn, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Rayburn, I want to ask you this. It's 47 years since Carter made the mistake of letting the first Ayatollah leave Paris and go back to Iran and undercut the regime of the Shah. It's 47 years they've been screaming death to America, death to Israel. It's 47 years since they've been setting up the terrorist networks and their ring of fire. It's 47 years where they've been putting out assassination contracts against our governmental and political leaders and try to carry that on, indeed on our shores. It's 47 years where everybody said, well, we have to search out and find the moderates, the so-called moderates, who we can cut a deal with. They're reasonable people. They don't want war. They're not driven by a mentality, a hegemonic mentality. They're not driven by a death cult mentality. They're not driven by the fact that they think that when they die, they're martyrs and they get all these virgins in heaven. These are perfectly Western-oriented people. They just want a deal, just a question of fine-tuning the deal to make them happy. Now, I'm very skeptical about that because I believe that the only way you're going to have safety for the world civilization, first in the Middle East and then Europe and then back here in the United States, is we have to have real regime change. So when President Trump says, well, there's already been regime change, I think he's kidding himself. You just replace one group of tyrants with people who may be even more extreme, the crazies in the Revolutionary Guard. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I tend to think that the current regime is unreformable. And you are right. There's been a long debate over, well, the hardliners versus moderates, or what they call themselves in Tehran. And there are different sides in Tehran in Iranian politics. One side calls themselves, or is referred to as the reformists. Those, I guess, are the moderates. And then the other side refers to themselves as principalists. Those are the hardliners who remain dedicated to what they see as the principles of the Islamic Revolution of 1979. But the difference between them is they're all the way at say the far right end of the political spectrum, and they're arguing over nuances that don't really matter to the United States. As the Iran expert Kareem Sajadpour here in D.C. put it one time, where the principalists or hardliners want to chant death to America, but the reformists are willing to modify that to near fatal injury to America. So I think that neither one is really a sustainable policy that the United States can engage in. Now, I think, of course, President Trump, I think just by him saying that there's new leadership the United States can deal with, that actually causes a dilemma and has probably shaken up. It introduces the question into the Iranian regime elite that they will have trouble answering, and also makes them all wonder, well, which one of you is talking to President Trump? Is it him? Is it him? Is it him? And keeps them guessing. So I actually think it's a pretty good information.
So you think
strategy.
It's a mind game that they're playing? It's
I have a feeling that's it. Yeah, I have a feeling that's it, because I think you're right. 47 years. Well, for almost all of those 47 years, President Trump has been on record about what he thinks about the regime. It's one of the things he's been most consistently talking about, alongside U.S. trade relationships. So his attitude, I think, is pretty well known at this point.
Well, Mr. Rayburn, on behalf of Chairman Garcia, Eric Levine, and myself, we want to thank you for being on Let the Record Show today. Joe Rayburn is a noted scholar at the Hudson Institute a diplomat, a foreign service officer, served in the military, a very thoughtful and important thinker on these great issues that have to do with the survival of Western civilization. We look forward to bringing you back, Mr. Rayburn, on Let the Record Show as this evolves, because I don't think we're going to have a quick resolution of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that, and I look forward to it as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show with Judge Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Levine. You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Roger Stone here. Every day you wait, your money loses value, but gold and silver don't follow those same rules. American Sovereign Bullion gives you access to a nationwide wholesaler network, helping you secure aggressive pricing on real physical metals. Call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide to learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver, delivered right to your door or with a gold IRA. Visit asbgold.com. That's asbgold.com for your free gold and silver guide today.